Um,
Right.
my first question for you is, when are we going to see a follow-up to the wonderful Living the Dream?
It's already recorded.
Right.
It's already done. It's all in the bag. We've just okayed some of the mixes. We're now looking at the running order, album title, cover, text, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Then we hand it to the record company. It's all just down to them, to be honest. You
Okay.
know, whatever they feel the best time to release it.
Okay. So there's no kind of release date or anything yet, or
Yeah, no. I mean, it's all in their hands, really. They'll tell us rather than us tell them.
okay. Okay. Um, one question I have for you is that heavy Hammond sound that I think is very intrinsic to the Uriah Heep sound.
Yeah.
How big an influence were bands like Vanilla Fudge and the Nice, when you were starting out?
Vanilla Fudge was the reason we got the Hammond organ with
Right.
Mark Stone. Yeah, definitely. I was a big Fudge fan. And
Yeah.
when we, prior to Uriah Heep, we were a band called Spice. And so we had, we called ourselves Spice because we didn't want to just be one genre. We want to
Yeah.
put toe in everything. And so that bled over to Uriah Heep, if you like. That's why the first album's got a bit of folk, bit of rock, bit of metal, bit of jazz, bit of everything in it.
Right.
And I when we first started hearing the songs back through the studio, I really felt that a keyboard would be a great embellishment to some of the songs and passages. And I always thought of the Hammond organ as being the perfect instrument because it can be very gentle, romantic, aggressive, power. It could be everything.
Yeah.
And I think the greatest exponent at the time for that
Deep
was Mark
Purple?
Stein. Yeah, and so that was a great influence.
Yeah. Talking about keyboards, you never fancied the Mellotron then?
Oh yeah, we used the Mellotrons on the first album. Yeah, I think it's loud and clear on "Come Away Belinda" and things like that. Yeah, I mean I love the Mellotron, but in the days that we were using them, were very unreliable.
Yeah.
And it could create a bit of a racket.
Yeah. But I mean, you've got that, as you've got that lovely Hammond sound. Was there a feeling that you wanted to try and outdo Deep Purple?
No. We were so immersed in what we were doing and creating what we were doing in every respect. We didn't even look at anybody else really.
Yeah.
And when you look at the, funny enough, back in the day in Hamwell Community Centre in Acton, we were rehearsing in one side of the hall, and the other side was Deep Purple.
Right. That must be noisy.
It was very noisy, and but a lot of good stuff came out of that. Which is marvelous. No, we never saw anybody as competition. We always, and if it was in a healthy way, if you like, But Purple went the virtuoso route, and we went the song route. So we got in harmony and all that stuff. So the really only common denominator we had was the Hammond organ, and maybe the fact we both played, quite aggressive music.
Yeah. Oh, well, you mentioned harmonies actually. I mean, one thing that fascinates me about the Uriah Heep sound is that that wonderful melodic vocal blend, and I just wondered how you at the time. How did you feel about? I think you were described actually. Somebody described you as the Beach Boys of heavy metal.
That was actually a quote from an American DJ.
I mean, was what Brian Wilson was doing, and all those late '60s bands, an influence at all vocally on Uriah Heep?
Well, when you think about it, coming from the '60s, it was all very sweet harmonies, all singing the chorus, little combos, people in suits doing little dance moves and stuff. It was all very polite and lovely. And of course, when we came out with the likes of Zeppelin and Purple and Sabbath and us, and we just took it to an whole new level. It was all the growing hair, wearing jeans, bottoms, stacked heels, Marshall stacks with their own skyline. It was a whole different ball game.
Sure.
But a lot of great creative stuff came out of that.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the great things about Heep was the fact that all five of us could sing. Yeah. And so harmony became a very natural thing. And in fact, if you listen to Gypsy, we started using harmony almost as another instrument. So we didn't use it just necessarily to just sweeten the chorus. We just used it as an entity on its own, big block harmonies, and then we started taking it further on our second album with Bird of Prey, doing step harmonies, and they became sort of trademarks for us. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, you think it's fair to say that you were probably a big influence on a band like Queen?
I think they've been quite vocal about it too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we've, influenced quite a lot of people in many ways, and that's just fantastic,
Yeah, yeah. Talking about singers, I mean, how close were Uriah Heep to signing David Coverdale and Paul Rodgers? Because I read somewhere that they auditioned for you.
Well, Paul Rodgers, you can just throw out the way. That's a rumor.
Oh, is it? Okay. He never auditioned for you at all.
Never a contender. No. As much as a fan of his voice I am, he's never a contender for Heep. I couldn't see him doing, for instance, July Morning. And the high harmonies and stuff.
Yeah.
He's very bluesy and gutsy, and in what he does, he's absolutely top notch and brilliant. But David Coverdale, yes, he came along at a time. To a rehearsal, I think it was John Henry's, I think it was at the time, it may have been Easy Hire. Anyway, rehearsal studios in London, and he walked in with a bottle of brandy and bravado and everything else, and it was great, and we just jammed, to be honest, without really going through any songs, just jammed, and what about this, what about that, what about try this, it was just one of those moments of a freeform audition, really. And of course, when he hit the microphone, it was marvelous. He could do it all. And we thought, oh yeah, this is good. And he's a very you felt his presence as a very powerful frontman.
Sure. So
we at the end of it all, we were kind of deciding what we should do, where we should go. He had management, and we had management, and they had to talk and all that sort of stuff. And just about that point where decisions were being laid on the table, he got the okay to go and form Whitesnake.
So he was off.
So that was his first love, and so he just left and did that,
Yeah.
And it was very successful with it too.
He was.
I mean, it was marvelous. It was a great move for him,
Sure. Is there any animosity from you to Elton John for stealing your drummer?
Well, it was a funny situation because at the time he was with Dwight when he suggested, and he actually suggested us Nigel Olsen to us.
Yeah.
And we took him on board. We started doing a UK tour, and then he got a phone call from Elton saying something like this. This is not fact, but do you want to stay on 20 quid a night, or you want 200 quid a night? Or 20 quid a week, I should have said.
Okay.
20 quid a week. And he left the dressing room, and I've never seen him since. Only in pictures. Never seen him, never kept in touch, anything. He's just gone.
Yeah.
But Nigel was always, apart from being a good drummer, he was a very good looking boy, and he always had that, you had that air about him that something was going to take off for him, and obviously it was Elton John.
Yeah. I'm interested. Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull recorded at the Chateau d'Erouville in 1973. He's gone on record saying there were lots of problems for the band. They even got food poisoning. He said that they effectively put the shat in Chateau. What was your experiences recording there when you recorded the Sweet Freedom album?
It was, I have to say, I don't quite know how to put this. Uriah Heep didn't take very well to recording away from home.
Okay.
Because all the dalliances that were happening on the road continued in the studio.
Yeah.
Whereas if we'd come home, you're with your family, and and then you have a different mindset on the whole thing. But saying that, it was a great experience. It was a weird place, very haunted.
Yeah.
All sorts of things were happening. But it was just an interesting place to be, you were you're sort of outside Paris, so you had nothing. There was no bar up the road, nowhere you can go. You had to drive into Paris, so you were pretty much self-contained.
Sure.
And when you're self-contained like that, a lot of fun happens. And a lot of fun did, but we come out with a really, really good album, so I was pleased about that.
Well, Pink Floyd recorded there, didn't they, in '72, and Elton John recorded there, and Cat Stevens recorded there. Jethro Tull are the only band that I've read about that said they really didn't like being there, to be honest with you. I was interested in your experiences.
I don't think we didn't like being there, but we just didn't warm to it in terms of, being away from home didn't work for us on the recording. We did 2 albums away from home. One was Sweet Freedom, one was Wonderworld, when the Music Land Studios in Munich. Again, that didn't sit well.
Right. I read somewhere that for the live album there were numerous live shows recorded: Rainbow Theatre, London, Manchester Free Trade Hall, Newcastle City Hall, Leicester. Is there any chance for like a 50th anniversary that all that stuff would be gathered up and put out there?
It's probably been dumped, to be honest. You know, and if I mean, it may have even been over-recorded with what we ended up with in Birmingham. You know, tapes recorded over. I've got no idea. I've everything I've literally done that's even been on the cutting room floor is usually resurfaced somewhere, and those haven't. So I'd assume they're gone forever.
All right. So somebody's wiped them off, or they're just missing, or you know.
Yeah, well, they just haven't come to my doorstep, to be honest, and yeah, everything else has.
Yeah. Okay. I'm interested. One of the things that defines the Uriah Heep sound is that wah-wah sound, that guitar sound. I'm just wondering how big a influence was somebody like Hendrix, and what other guitarists were a huge influence on your sound?
Oh no, the wah-wah was definitely Jeff Beck.
Oh, okay, yeah.
With the Truth album. That was mind-blowing to me, because he made it talk, he made it aggressive, he made it snarl, it made it really sweet, you know, it had everything. And again, you know, I heard that and went, wow, that's for me. I've got to get one of those babies. And I got one, and it was called a Cry Baby.
Right.
It's just, once I got it on board, I just loved it, you know. And today I use it almost as an expression pedal, you know, bend up, foot goes down, those sort of things, you know. I can find frequencies, you know. If you think of Uriah Heep, you've got a lot of bass on the left hand side, you've got a lot of keyboards, you know, the hammond organ and the bass drums all filling up that bottom end, and so I can get some tones out of the wah-wah that just sit on top of it. So yeah, I use it in many ways.
Yeah, it's because I read something you were interested in jazz quite early on. I'm just wondering if any of that influenced your sound at all, or the way you play.
I did a little bit. I think it still influences me today, you know. I dabble in it a little bit at home, but that came about was that I had a guitar teacher for about 6 months in Walthamstow, in the east end of London, and he was a guy called Alan Hodgkinson, and he was the second guitarist to Django Reinhardt.
Okay.
So everything he was teaching, I think he changed his name to Alan Hotchkiss for stage or something like that. Anyway, he was teaching lots of jazz inversions and things, you know. So that was kind of my entry level. And then when I got quite proficient at what he was, you know, giving me, and I could, you know, I had to wait a week for. He gave me something on a Saturday, and I had to wait a whole week to go back and see him again, because the lessons. But I could play it back that afternoon, so I kind of got to the point where my thirst was that, you know, I'm gonna have to do this myself. I could see this coming, and so that's what I did, you know. Yeah,
the old Burt Weedon playing a day sort of book, that sort of thing.
Wasn't that bad. God bless him. But you know, I did, you know, dropping the needle on the albums and stuff like that, and just learned a few bits, you know.
Yeah.
I was never good at copying things at all.
Right.
Everything I did was kind of an inversion of, in my version of what I was trying to copy in the end.
I mean, it's probably much easier for young guitarists now with the amount of tuition and stuff there is on the internet. It's probably a lot easier than it was back in the day. A lot easier,
you know, just the entry level of guitars, you know. I mean, my guitar was £12.10p from a pawnbroker's, you know. It's actually still on the wall over here. Okay. And it's, you know, it's like a bow and arrow, you know, it's your strings made your finger bleed, and like, you know, and stuff like that, you know. Whereas now the entry level is you get a Strat or a Gibson, and you know, quite cheaply on Epiphone, and you know, even if they're copied, they're great entry levels, you know. And you start at a different place, really.
Sure. Supporting Three Dog Night, I think, was a huge break for Uriah Heep. I was wondering, what are your best and worst memories as an opening act?
We've had, you know, Three Dog Night was great because we went over. This is the first time we played in America.
They were big then, weren't they?
Yeah, they're fantastic and great musicians. And they were like three vocalists, weren't there? You know, and all the band were great players. But they were the biggest things to slice bread over in America at the time. So we jumped onto their tour, and our first show was in Indianapolis to 10,000 people. You know, coming from playing clubs, the Marquee. You know, so that was a big jump.
Right.
But we were a bit concerned because we were a rock band and they were primarily a pop band. You know.
Yeah.
In those days, it was just good music and bad music. It didn't matter. You had all these bills going out. I mean, to give you an example, we had Uriah Heep, Earth, Wind and Fire, and ZZ Top. You know, it was just amazing. It was either good or bad music. It wasn't pigeonholed at the time. But so that was a good time. But I mean, one of the best times we had would be probably with Def Leppard. Again, they were big spread. We got a Bombernog out that was got top 40 in America.
Yeah.
They hit with MTV, which was becoming big then with their video portion. Sugar on Me, I think it was.
That's
we had it called The Way That It Is, and that was high rotation on MTV for 8 times a day, which was amazing. And so it was a big thing. So we got on that bill, and then they were great. It was a good English camaraderie all round, and they treated us well, and you know, they loved us being with them, you know, which is great. So there's a lot of respect on both sides. Worst, another good one was Judas Priest quite recently, actually, in America. With those, it was just absolutely wonderful. They're the same thing, you know, the respect between the two, you know.
Yeah.
And that was funny because almost every night the Judas Priest thing, there was 100 years of classic rock and metal every stage every night, you know. So it was a great night. Worst, not really had a lot of worst, really. We had a few bands that have. You know, in the old days, you used to cut down the light and then cut down your time and cut down this and that. And we did have a point. We've had the plug pulled on us a couple of times because we've gone down so well. We played in Chicago with T-Rex. And we went on and just, it was a rock and roll city, you know, and we went on and just nailed it. And they could not stop yelling for us once we left the stage.
Right.
So much so that the T-Rex crew had to lock us in our dressing room, and we couldn't get out to do an encore. So that was how far that was, you know. And it was what was quite funny about that was it was one of those theatres where you had a radio thing in the you know, a speaker, and you turn it up and you got the audience, and we heard them go on. And I can remember Mark Bolan saying he's trying to cool the crowd down. And I thought it was quite clever. He said, "Well, what about Janis Joplin?" Because everyone, what about Jimi Hendrix? Yeah. What about Jim Morrison? Yeah. And then somebody in the crowd said, "What about Uriah Heep?" And went, yeah. And it was game over for him. You know, he couldn't. You know, it's game over. That's all I can say. So you know, there's a couple of stories.
Well, I've read a few biographies and things like that, and there's quite a few bands that said Aerosmith were quite difficult when you supported them because, you know, they weren't. Kiss have gone on to say that Aerosmith would unplug them and all sorts of things like that. Did you ever support Aerosmith in the day?
No, we were on some festivals with them out in America, but no more than that. But we had Kiss supporters. I mean, in America, I mean, we broke Kiss, ZZ Top, all supporting us. Rush, Foreigner. Also, because we were having it large at that time.
Right, but you supported Kiss on the Love Gun tour as well, didn't you?
Then again, it turned around and we were supporting them. Yeah, so you know.
Have you got any stories from the Kiss Love Gun tour? I wonder what that must have been like.
Just one night, I think, when they were supporting us, I remember them saying, "Would you mind if we use some pyros?" And we were using a very small amount of pyro ourselves, you know, more confetti and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, you know, all right, you know, why not? You know, it's all good for the show.
Yeah.
But then when they did their pyros, it was like the New Year's fireworks was playing, you know. And then when we went on and we did ours, and it was foot, few confettis, foot. Yeah. We thought, oh dear. But in the end, the music won the day, and you know, and we had a big hit, so no harm done. But it was quite a funny thing, you know.
Oh, did you put a banner on their drum riser or something like that on the last show?
When we supported them, yeah, they used to have this the drum rise that went up on hydraulics like this.
That's right. Yeah.
Big bit of cloth here with a devil on it,
Right.
sort of. And so it'd start going up, and they'd be on their knees,
Yeah.
Doing all this sort of stuff, and all that.
Yeah.
And then it would go up and go up and go up, and then the lights would hit the eyes of the devil and all that sort of thing. It looked quite good, but it was the last night for us.
Yeah.
So, and last nights are quite famous for Heep, and we got at the soundcheck we got our crew to put another sign in front of it and said, "Uriah Heep would like to thank Chris for a great tour. Meanwhile, ... So they're going, and reading it as it comes up. By then, Uriah Heep had left the building.
Did they ever get back to you about that?
No, they took it in great humour. They're great guys, good guys.
Yeah. Is July Morning your stairway to heaven, in your opinion? How did that track come about?
I think it is, without knowing it. Both writing it independently. Yeah. It just happens that it was written in the same period of time.
Yeah.
And we're both making use of our vocalists who could both sing quite high.
Yeah.
So it was just coincidence more than anything. But yeah, since later on, with hindsight, it looks like it is our Stairway to Heaven and vice versa. Oh no, not Stairway to Heaven, Child in Time.
Right. It still makes it into the live set today, though, doesn't it? I think July Morning.
It's a song that it resonates with everybody every night. We put a bit more into it with a few guitar things that I do, So
yeah.
How
comfortable would you be with Uriah Heep being labelled like a progressive band or progressive rock band, especially some of the stuff you're doing in the early 70s?
Fine. I mean, actually, I picked up a Progressive Rock Award from Progressive magazine, So yeah, I mean, we've always had our toe in that particular genre. I mean, if you look at Salisbury, the Salisbury track, the title track is 20 minutes long, something like 20 minutes long. It's got the 27 brass and woodwood section on it. So we've always done things like long solos, Magician's Birthday itself.
Yeah.
But the Paradise of Spell, again, progressive rock, and even to Living the Dream, our last studio album with Rocks in the Road, and it's all been said. We've always had that. We've always had that thing where when we're writing, if it's saying the right things and doing stuff and doing it to you in the heart, then we let it grow, and that becomes progressive rock.
Yeah. Just a couple of questions by my subscribers. One person's asked, what song do you really wish you'd written? Yeah.
Oh, Happy Birthday.
Well, Slade do very well out of that Christmas song, don't they?
They do. They do extremely well. Yeah. I mean, Happy Birthday would be a good one, wouldn't it? Because sang all over the world. I don't know how they collect royalties for that, but never mind. We'd find a way.
Yeah. I've got just one more question for you. If you had to introduce somebody to Uriah Heep by giving them an album, not a compilation or live album, one of your studio albums, which album would you think this represents us most of all?
Very difficult, but I'll probably go back to the album that had the most impact at the time, which was Demons and Wizards.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's got the easy, it's got the rock on it, it's got the progressive rock stuff, it's got the soft stuff, the Wizard, it's got the the Rainbow Demons, it's got the groove things, it's got a bit of everything in there. And it was the album that actually took us onto the world stage, so but that would be a good place to start.
Yeah. Anyway, Mick, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for doing this interview, and I look forward to catching the show in Cambridge.
Happy days, mate. Look forward to it.
All the very best. All the very best.
Bye for now, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.